And for my listeners, when I say commercial real estate, I mean office, retail, and industrial, and to some degree hospitality as well. And I know retail property was already under a lot of pressure even pre-COVID-19, with a lot of retailers going out of business and the whole push towards online ordering and everything that's been going on with Amazon. I know here locally in Winston-Salem, office was already under a lot of pressure simply because we've lost a lot of corporate headquarters here in Winston-Salem. Jay, give us a quick update. I mean, what are you seeing in commercial real estate right now? Where are some of the dark spots and maybe even some of the bright spots as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. I know a lot of people are concerned about it. And as you and I have talked in the past, those communities that are able to recognize that their current challenges and become innovative in some solutions, thinking more outside of just today, but thinking 5-10 years down the road, are the ones that are going to be successful. And I think that with commercial real estate, particularly right now, it's obvious what's having a hard time, the retail side, the restaurant side, those kind of things. But I think a bright spot is the industrial space. And as you'll see around Forsyth County, we've had some really good job announcements here recently because of some investments that have been made in the past. We've seen some additional announcements of some buildings that are going to be spec buildings that are going to be going up to attract more of those industrial users. You're seeing it all over Guilford County as well. That's frankly a bright spot in the commercial side of things. One thing I'm really fascinated by and watching very closely is the discussion around office space and what's going to happen to office space moving forward. I was in a conversation earlier today with someone who out of the Raleigh area, and they were thinking that this is going to be a year's type of event, and then we're going to be moving back to a normal way of life that we have seen in the past. I think it's kind of interesting. I don't know what the answer is going to be. I think our leaders in the Winston-Salem market particularly have identified some office buildings that they are marketing to national site selectors, because you may start seeing some of your larger headquarters in the larger cities break down into more regional type of corporate centers. And so that could offer a lot of opportunity for places like Winston-Salem. And so, the debate is, do we need more office space because of social distancing and those kind of things in order to have our employees back in the buildings? And so, how do you keep folks safe when they're in the buildings and those sorts of ideas? I think a lot of that's being discussed within the commercial office sector right now. There's just a lot of debate over what really is going to happen, but I frankly fall under the in the category of, I believe office space is going to this provides Winston-Salem and places like Winston-Salem a great opportunity to expand upon and try to find some of those middle-sized companies that won't need to be in office settings.
Now, well, and you mentioned the industrial space, and with everything that's going on with this pandemic, which is global in nature, not necessarily just isolated to us right here in North Carolina or even the United States. Do you think there's some opportunity that we're starting to reclaim or reposition some of those jobs that have been offshored? Are they coming back to the United States in terms of manufacturing?
It is my hope and my belief that is going to happen. Will it happen overnight? No. It takes time to unravel from those other countries. I think a lot of issues are going to need to change in order to help attract those global companies. Regulatory issues, tax issues, those kind of things are going to need to be put in place. But one thing that you're starting to see is we're starting to see a development of these 100,000 to 500,000 square foot facilities. And they're starting to North Carolina is being really looked at closely for these. But one key area that we're watching are the 5,000 to 20,000 square foot buildings, flex buildings. There's just not any of those out there right now, and you can't find them, but the demand for them is very high. And so I think that's going to be an opportunity for some folks here in the Triad area to really take a look at, particularly when the numbers and financing of it can work. The demand is there. It's just a matter of the labor shortage is causing construction challenges. Your commodity prices are through the roof right now. And so it's making the cost of construction go up, which is holding that demand back for these holding the supply back for these type of buildings. So that's something I'm watching over the next few years. And I think it's going to be, I think there's going to your point about bringing folks back in. I think that's going to be the critical component that's going to help us continue to grow.
Now, I know here locally in Winston-Salem, Front Street Capital, they've been extremely active on the commercial real estate development side. They are largely responsible for the large mixed-use project that you see underway in downtown Winston-Salem near Bailey Park, as well as several other projects that you see under construction here, not just in Winston-Salem, but quite frankly, all over the Triad region. I know they just recently petitioned the city of Winston-Salem for some type of financing to do a spec building out in Union Cross Business Park. Are you familiar with that project at all, and sort of what the vision and intent of that might be? Or
I'm not directly. I know what you're speaking of. I've seen it in the media, but it lends to what I was saying a little while ago about, I think it's a 250,000 square foot building they're looking to build. The companies that are looking to move into those type of facilities are very active in our area right now. And I think there's a lot of opportunity, which is why they're willing to take the risk to put that spec building out there. I think they know that the consumer for that is there. And I think it will be a good jobs opportunity for Winston-Salem at some point in time in the near future.
Yeah, I know we had Councilwoman and Mayor Pro Tem Dee Dee Adams on the Chronicle Live. And for my listeners, if you're just not joining us, you're locked in live. I'm your host, Algenon Cash, every Sunday morning right here on WTOB. We invite you to join us for this public affairs conversation. But I also do a show called Locked in Live every Monday and Wednesday night on Facebook with the Winston-Salem Chronicle. And we had Councilwoman Dee Dee Adams on, and she was talking about that project and how she actually believed that would be a good investment on the city's behalf in terms of supporting what Front Street Capital would like to do out there in the Union Cross Business Park. So, Jake, you're in real estate, and you've got a very successful business partner, but she's also not just your business partner, she's your life partner as well. She's your wife, Brooke Cashin, who runs or operates a real estate agency that's a part of Allen Tate. Has been very, very active, not only in our local community, but even at the state and the national level. And I was reading, Brooke, that you've done somewhere almost nearly $200 million in real estate deals, predominantly single-family homes. So tell us what's going on out there right now. COVID-19 has really caused a slowdown in so many segments of the economy and the business world. What's happening with housing?
Sure. So we are steady as she goes. Looking at our numbers year over year, we are above where we were last year at this time. I kind of joke and say it's about the only thing that you can shop for from the comfort of your home. The majority of it, you could actually start online and start looking, so people have a lot of time, and they're starting to recognize that they do need maybe some additional space to spread out for the home office, to homeschool, and just to basically have some separate living area. Houses are kind of getting pretty small as folks are forced to stay in. Yeah, that number, that 200 million, I think it's just because I've been in the business for a while now. But yeah, we've been very, very blessed. We have a great team, myself, and then we have, of course, Jake, who oversees everything. We have Jill, our office manager, and then we have 3 buyers agents, and they're all hopping. The biggest challenge right now, and I think anyone would share with you this in the industry, is just inventory. We have no inventory. On Friday, I have a first-time home buyer, and I pulled up in Kernersville, 27284 zip code, anything under 175. There were only 3 homes for sale, and 2 of those would not have been in a condition to go FHA or VA. So I think that just speaks to the need of affordable housing. If we're going to start keeping, our young professionals around, if we're going to start keeping lower to middle management folks around, and we're going to have a diverse vested community. So that has been definitely the biggest challenge. Multiple offers, things going under contract in the first day, over asking price. And I don't think this is a shock to anyone who is active in the industry or anyone who's been out there looking.
Well, that's incredible. I would have certainly almost thought the opposite, with the whole virus outbreak that people they would be fearful of coming out and touring homes and doing all those kind of things. But if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that particular, the whole virus is not necessarily a barrier. People are still doing their shopping virtually. Is that what I'm understanding?
So they're starting virtually. I mean, just with the advent of technology, there's so much that they can do to start online and really to hone it down. So whereas we may have shown, an individual buyer 10 or 15 homes in the past, now we can narrow that down to 2 or 3. Our association was very proactive in staying and remaining an essential business from the beginning of COVID. We felt that there were maybe 2 weeks that we really put the brakes on to figure out exactly what that meant for the protection of the consumer and for our industry. And we went in with some guidelines that were both CDC recommended and our own. So all of our agents or all of the realtors that I'm aware of who are active are very, very conscientious, about making sure they're masked, they're limiting the people that are in the home, the number of people that are going through, making sure that they are pre-qualified, and then just kind of restricting, touch to surfaces, and just using some really good common sense. But the great part is, with the advent of social media, with the advent of virtual tours, drone photography, measurements, taken by professionals, folks can really start narrowing down what it is that they want. They get in, they take a look, and then they can discern. But I mean, you couple, the low interest rates right now, folks, their ability to buy more house than they've ever been able to afford is definitely there. So, you really need in this market someone, whether it's our team or someone else, they need to have some experience, because this is not a market for a novice realtor. I mean, we all started new. So I'm certainly not saying don't use somebody who's brand new, but there are definitely negotiations that are taking place after it goes under contract, just trying to stay within loan regs that are outlined by FHA and VA and some of these down payment assistance programs. And you want somebody who knows what they're doing, who can get you actually to closing and not just get you under contract.
Yeah, and you say that the biggest issue that you have right now is really more related to having enough product or inventory to be able to sell to the public that's interested or demanding housing. Is the shortage in inventory, is that related to COVID-19 at all, in terms of contractors not being able to construct homes fast enough? What variable is really pushing the tightness in supply?
We were actually seeing a tightness in supply for about the past year and a half. So 18 months we've been struggling, more so with COVID. And I do think some of it is you have builders who are just now entering the market, even from, outside of the recession. Like, they're just now starting to get their feet under them. Lumber prices, supply prices are at an all-time high. So the margins are very small, and then you couple that with some cities who are trying to make the best use of their land, but maybe they're not approving projects that would make good sense for a certain price point because they're holding out for something better. But we still have labor issues where we don't have the people. Now we have a white goods issue where you cannot get white goods into some of these new homes. I have folks that are trying to close on a $350,000 townhome and they can't even get a refrigerator. We have friends that own a security business and they cannot get smoke alarms, fire detectors, security components, because all of those have been delayed by COVID. So there is definitely a part of that that's impacted by COVID, but I still think we were dealing with a shortage prior to. In our area, immediate area in Forsyth County, we're talking about less than a 2-month supply of inventory, which means if not another buyer came into the market, we would consume what is available, good or bad, in less than 1.7 months. And that is something I've never seen in my 20-year history. And you talk to people who have a much deeper history than I do, and they've never seen that either.
Wow. So if my listeners are listening, if you're listening closely, if you're in the market to buy a home, sounds like you better snap one up while you can, because the supply is dwindling fast. And it also sounds like to me, when you've got that much demand and shortage of supply, if you're looking to sell your home, this may now might be the time to do so. So, Brooke, we'll make sure you leave some contact information for my listeners so they can get in touch with you. It sounds like on the housing side, things are going really well. But I know from talking to my good friend John Louder, who's the president of the Piedmont Triad Apartment Association, on the multifamily side, things may not be going, quite as well. John, talk to us about what's happening with apartments right now. I know one of the big headlines that we see nationally is this whole end to the federal moratorium on evictions, and I've seen some reports that 30% or more of all tenants across the country could be in danger of losing their apartment due to eviction. So, what do you see happening in your world right now?
Algenon, thanks for having me on, yeah, it's interesting times in the apartment world, in the rental housing world in general. What I'd like to point out at the very beginning when we talk about these things is that rental housing, it's like most housing, there's a lot of variation in there. So you have very expensive, newly built apartments in urban areas. That's been the trend over the last few years. And then you also have older apartments that are more affordable. You have large multifamily complexes, and you have single family homes that are for rent. So when you talk about rental housing, there's a wide variety. That federal moratorium applies to what are called covered properties or federally covered properties. And those are anything basically that have any federal dollars involved. So they don't have to be, a lot of people think that means, say, Section 8 housing or voucher housing. That could be any housing that's secured with an FHA loan or anything that Freddie or Fannie has been involved with. But that's only about 30% of the stock, of the housing stock. So the other 65 to 70% is not covered. So what happened through most of the pandemic is state governments and local governments had their own moratorium. And so that kind of put a freeze. What we saw happening is, thanks to especially the unemployment insurance at $600 a week that everybody was getting, not everybody, but people who qualified were getting through the end of July, that helped everybody pay their bill. Everybody who was getting it, they could pay their bills. So at a national level, if you look at the market rate, so market rate's really the normal apartment. When I say normal, they're not getting federal subsidies. So these are not voucher program type housing. The A and B level properties, which are the more expensive level properties, they are seeing people pay their rent at roughly only a point or two lower rate than they did last year. The real problem is that normally when somebody doesn't pay their rent, the next rent they generally catch up. What we're seeing now is that same group of people who didn't pay their rent in January, didn't pay their rent in February, didn't pay their rent in March. So you might not have a whole lot of people who haven't been able to pay their rent, but they have a very large amount of debt that they've accumulated during the moratorium. So that when the time does come, when they can be evicted, they will be, even if they stay in their housing, even if the moratorium is extended, at some point that bill is going to come due and it's going to follow them. And from the housing operator side, that's a large amount of money. That could be, we have one member company, they said they have 90 residents who have not paid rent. This is a very large company, so 90 is not a large number for them. But those 90 residents are, the tune of their bill owed is about $785,000. So that's a lot of debt. Obviously they had a significant rent and they fell far behind probably at the beginning of the year. So interestingly, occupancy rates are still up there. People are they're actually having successful lease up seasons right now. It's very similar to what Brooke was talking about on the purchase side. People, they tour virtually. Most apartment communities close their offices and they ask people to do their virtual tours. And then when it came time to do a final look, they would schedule an appointment, because the offices are closed to the public in general. They don't want people coming in and out to limit the spread of COVID. And then so they've been pretty successful leasing up. So I'd say the biggest effect has been that rents have frozen. That's been the main thing. Rents are really not going up at the rate that they were before. And but other than that, now as you go down the income spectrum, then you start to see more people who haven't been able to pay their rent. Instead of it being, like at the A level, it's been something like 93% of people have been able to pay their rent or a partial rent. When you get down to the C level, it's more like 84, 85%. And so that becomes more problematic.
I appreciate you providing us that insight. If you're just now joining us, if you're tuning in late, you're locked in live. I'm your host, Algenon Cash. You've been listening to Jake Cashin, who's an expert in the commercial real estate market, as well as his business partner and life partner, Brooke Cashin, who is just an all-star when it comes to selling homes, almost $200 million in deals. And the president of the Piedmont Triad Apartment Association, John Louder, is here with us this morning as well. So we're going to get into a quick lightning round because I'm going to run out of time here. John, I know one thing that your association is really advocating for is sort of more of a shift away from a moratorium on evictions towards more of a rental assistance program that would really really require the General Assembly as well as Congress to get behind it and support it. Jake, you've spent a lot of time lobbying and working with the General Assembly. Give us your thoughts. I mean, how open do you think the General Assembly might even be open to a rental assistance program, or in some of your conversations with state leaders, have you even heard that come up yet? And Jake, I think you're muted. There you go.
Sorry about that. Yes. No, that's a great point. John and Brooke jump in here as well. I think there is some openness to the idea. I know the North Carolina Realtors Association is working really hard behind the scenes to try to get something moving in September during the special session that's coming up. I think that's going to be top of the agenda, at least from the real estate industry side of things. So yeah, I think there's some openness to it, and I think legislators realize the impact of not doing something.
Yeah, and I know I've had some conversations with John, and we've talked about the difference between a moratorium versus the rental assistance program, and it does seem like rental assistance would be the pathway to not only try to help tenants, but also keep a lot of these landlords and property owners whole as well. You know, John, you also mentioned the fact that in the upper end of the multifamily market, your more A-class, B-class properties, you're not seeing nearly as much pressure. And you know, I was living downtown until recently, but I'm getting ready to leave downtown from one of those A-class properties that you mentioned, only because there's not as much to do downtown any longer. All of our bars are closed down. Any kind of nightlife has sort of been shut down in downtown, and you know, restaurants are a lot slower than they were at one other point. You know, Brooke, from your end, you're seeing how active the housing market is. How active are you seeing people like me who are looking to move out of the urban center and back into suburban life? Is that some kind of a growing trend during these times?
It definitely is. We have seen more people that are kind of looking at both the space in the home. So I actually just read an article the other day in the Wall Street Journal regarding the comeback of the McMansion, which I don't think we ever thought we would see that again. Outside of that, I think people just feel like there's maybe a certain unrest in downtowns. There's a lot of there's just a lot of unrest on social media and in life right now. So they're looking for something with just when they can leave and go home at night, it's just a little bit more peaceful and, there's not so much going on. I think that, 6 months ago, the draw was definitely downtown, especially downtown Winston. I had lots of folks who were very interested in moving into downtown Winston, and I think that'll come back. I just think right now, though, you are looking and seeing people that are wanting a little bit more land to spread out. They want a little bit more space for their family, which typically means a suburban area. But they still want to be close to downtown. I mean, they still want a quick drive into downtown if they want to do something. So I don't think this is the end of, the downtown comeback by no way, shape, or form. But I agree with you. I mean, we've talked about, personally, if I'm going to go downtown and I'm going to spend, $100 on dinner and a nice, couple of drinks, I don't want to sit. I mean, I don't mind sitting out in the street, but I don't want to sit there while I'm watching protesters. And I don't want to sit there when I don't know what's going to happen in the evening, because I can do that in the comfort of my own home. And I feel for those restaurant and bar owners, because I think there's a lot of us out there who really would like to go back and support them. And I just think that right now the uncertainty is just disappointing.
No, I agree with you. And I think downtown Winston-Salem had really come a tremendously amount of distance in terms of being revitalized. But it seems like in the last 150 days, a lot of what was done over the last 15 years or so has really been undone. So, my situation is a little bit different. I actually met a young lady, and she didn't want me living the bachelor life anymore. So she's making me settle down a little bit. So I gotta get out of the penthouse and get back to the suburbs. But
I see that good food you're making. So.
yeah, I know I'm cooking and I'm doing all kind of stuff now. But we're running out of time. I want to thank y'all for being with me this morning on Locked In Live. Again, for my listeners, this is every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. right here on WTOB. Real quick, I know you can find all these people online. They're all really, really good at social media. So go check out Jake Cashin if you've got some interest in talking about commercial real estate. John Louder, who's our president over at the Piedmont Triad Apartment Association, who is an industry advocate but is also a housing advocate as well. I would encourage you to go check him out. And then, Brooke, really, really quick, for that listener who might want to sell or buy their home, what do they need to do? How do they get in touch with you?
Sure. Just go to our website. It's my name. It's Brooke with an E, Brooke, Cashin, CASHION.com. And you can Google it. That's a great way to go. But Brooke Cashin and Associates is the name of our team. But it's very easy to find if they just want to Google it.
Hey, y'all stay locked in.